Coming up, Apple celebrates a major milestone and we review the stellar Trek.
You're listening to Double Time, your daily accessible technology show. Now, here's your hosts, Stephen Scott and Sean Preece.
Hey, Sean Preece, how you doing, my old mucker, my old horse thief? How you doing?
Not well, Stephen Scott. I am angry, sir. Angry. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Have you seen the news today? Oh, boy.
Seen? What ableist language is this?
Don't you start. Google are discontinuing the Google Nest Smart Thermostat Gen 1.
Breaking news.
And Gen 2. So if you've got the early Nest thermostats, good luck. Especially if you're blind, because no longer will you be able to use your smart speaker to turn it on or off to control it, or your smart app on your smartphone, because now you can just use the device itself. As we all know, it's inaccessible.
Right, so okay, hang on, because I'm kind of laughing around this, and because you're starting a rant, and when that happens, I usually find it amusing.
It's terrible.
But this is actually pretty serious, isn't it? I mean, if people can't use their thermostats, it's not that you can just swap out a thermostat easily.
Nope. No, that's right.
People are going to have to spend money on this to solve this problem.
There's two parts to a smart thermostat. There's the control unit, which actually wires into your boiler or your heating system. And then you've got the display unit, the control unit that you have in the house, if you like, to set it. Now, as we all know, the Google Nest display unit is not accessible. There's a screen and a dial. There's no speech on it. It's not accessible whatsoever if you can't see the screen. But it doesn't matter, because you can connect it to your smart speaker and, just say, turn the heating and set it to whatever temperature. And it's all beautiful. What they're doing in October of this year is they're cutting it off from the Google Cloud servers, which means it can no longer talk to any of these external services. So the only way you can control it, it's not going to stop working totally. As I said, you can still use the actual unit in your house and turn it and set it manually, but we can't. So for all intents and purposes, it becomes useless to us. Now, if you have the Google Nest Generation 3 here in the UK, at least, I know that one is still going to be supported. There is one called the E as well, Google Nest E. I have no idea about that one at all. The only ones they've mentioned that are being discontinued are the Gens 1 and 2. But yeah, I just think this is one of those times when you see all these smart devices that rely on a third-party server, the Google Cloud, or all of them mainly do this. You need to connect to the company's server in order to control it. This is the risk. This is the danger. That company goes, that becomes unusable. All of these services should be controllable through your own home network. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. So I am going to be looking. Yeah. Oh, come on.
No, I was going to say, look, I get it, and I understand that, and trust me, I'm on your side on this. Because, what I'm thinking is how Google would respond to this. They would say, well, the thermostat will continue to work, I'm guessing.
Yes,
but it just won't be connected to the internet in the way that it was before. It won't have the smarts attached to it. Still will function as a thermostat.
Yes, I'm sorry. It was sold as a smart thermostat. It wasn't just sold as any old thermostat. The whole selling point of this.
Yes, but the bigger issue for us, of course, as you're saying, is that it makes, by not being connected in the way it's connected through the smarts, through the phone, through Lady A or Lady G or whatever, it has become or will become inaccessible at that point.
Absolutely.
So you're going to have to buy a new one.
Yes, you are. Yeah, you absolutely are. So any recommendations? If you are in the US, you can get a discount on the latest version. Check out the Google. You'll get an email anyway. Check it out. You can get, I think, $160 Canadian.
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not one of the. I'm all for equality, and I think I believe in it 100%. I think we should all be treated equally. But I think when we're treated unequally,
yes,
and I think this might be one example of it, then I think Google should be stepping up and saying, look, if you're a blind customer who has one of these devices, you should get a free upgrade.
I absolutely agree.
Because ultimately, for anyone else outside of blindness, essentially, it's a choice whether or not you choose to. And actually, there are a lot of other disabled people who'll be impacted by this as well. Lots of people who physically can't touch the device, who may be relying by voice. So, they will be impacted as well. So I think it's on these companies to kind of, this is the problem. You see, accessibility being at the core of a company's values is really important and all that, but ultimately it has to be in everybody's mind at all times. And did anyone in the room, when they were deciding to abandon these devices, as I'm sure they probably would have at some point anyway, did anyone in the room say, now hang on, what if someone's blind and uses this with a smartphone or a smart device, and that's the only way they can actually use the device?
Yeah,
and I bet no one brought that up. I bet no one brought that up in the room.
And if you're in Europe, there is no discount. There's no more Google Nest smart thermostats coming to Europe. That is it. They will offer you a discount on a third party. To-Do is one they are offering a discount on. But again, this is a purchase that is unnecessary. We shouldn't have to make.
We will get into more on this. I promise you we'll talk more about this, and I'll be interested to hear what people's thoughts are on that. But so far, Nest 1 and Nest 2, those generations will be affected. Is that correct? By the October
That's right. October
deadline?
2025, according to the email that was sent out.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll hear what you have to say on this as well. Perhaps you've upgraded to a newer, better thermostat. I suppose we're at risk with all of these. This is the problem, aren't we? We're always at risk when it comes to buying these kind of devices. Makes me nervous. I actually opted for one that was from my supplier of energy. And I kind of chose that only because I think at the time it was the only one that was accessible before the Nest. I don't think Nest was available at that point. And so I went for one called Hive out of the UK by British Gas. And I feel a little bit safer in that because it's part of British Gas. So I feel like, well, if British Gas goes away, we've got bigger problems.
I'm seriously thinking of just looking for one that's accessible on device.
On its own, yeah. A talking thermostat, yeah. They have to exist. I'm sure they do.
Yeah, Cobalt did one at one time here in the UK with a remote control, but I don't know if they still do. I haven't seen it in a long time.
See, we're back to specialist again. This is the problem. We start getting nervous, don't we? And we start to think maybe specialist is the only way to go because then we know it's going to be there. It's going to work.
No, but I mean, even the smart ones aren't cheap. And then you need to get someone to install it, wire the control unit in. It turns out to be an expensive thing. Anyway.
We'll come back to this, but listen, today we're going to be focusing on the Stellar Trek because we've been talking a lot about navigation, and we've been talking about different apps for navigation. Lots of great ideas on Apple and Android have been coming in. But we're going to focus today on the Stellar Trek, which is a hardware device from Humanware. It's got some really interesting updates as well. We talked about, of course, with the book reading function now available and some other cool features as well. We're going to be joined today by Aaron Linson, who's been using the Stellar Trek for a long time and is going to be joining us to talk about his experience with it. Before that, though, got to mention the big story of the day, and it is in our news today.
The news.
And that is that Apple are celebrating a rather pretty impressive anniversary, and that is Apple VoiceOver itself celebrates 20 years today. It's happy birthday to Apple VoiceOver. And you might remember we had a chat back in, I think it was December last year, with Mike Shebanek. Now, Mike worked at Apple and led the team which actually developed and created VoiceOver. Let's hear a little bit of that conversation that we had with Mike back in 2024.
There was always a bit of an urban myth about how it came about. How it
Stevie
came
Wonder did
to
it.
be. Yeah, it was all Stevie Wonder, or was it the National Federation of the Blind? There was lots of bringing a lawsuit because iTunes U material wasn't accessible. There was lots of rumors flying around as to why. Not just VoiceOver was created, or indeed any accessibility was created, but why it was decided essentially to become a core component of every Apple product from then on in, because that was very unusual at that time. Can you shed any light on this for us?
Yeah, and of course you can imagine it almost didn't come to be. I think that's what makes the story so fascinating. So, as I said, I was in product management. I'm in the software side of the house. My manager walks in and says, "Hey, I have a problem for you to solve. Probably take a couple weeks." A couple of weeks. Okay, great. Well, I'm still at it, 20, 30 years later. So we knew that wasn't true. He didn't tell me that, thankfully. But it was basically a situation where Apple had a customer, the state of Maine, where Mac computers were provided for all the students there. And you can imagine there were students who were blind and they wanted to use the same computer that everybody else in that state was using. And they couldn't. At that time, there wasn't a solution. There wasn't a screen reader for the Mac. Mac had moved from sort of the old classic OS to the new modern Mac OS 10. And of course, now we have all the new versions. But during the transition, the screen reader that did exist went away. And so it came to me to sort of figure out, what should we do about this? Should we go get somebody to make one? Should we license something? Should we build something and sell it. Like, there's a whole bunch of ideas here. And as a product manager, that's my job, is to figure out what are all the possibilities and then come back with the best solution. And at one point, I ended up having to present this to our chief technical officer, who's like second to Steve Jobs in the company. And I'm walking through all of these options and possibilities. And I remember him very vividly saying, "You don't seem very excited about any of these." And that was pretty insightful, because I was a little nervous. I was speaking to this guy who's like the top guy in the company. And I'm trying to do the right thing, as a manager, as an employee. I'm walking through methodically all the things they teach you to do. And he kind of just stopped for a second. I'm just so thankful for him. And he said, "I feel like you got something else that you're not telling me." And I said, "Well, I do, but it's kind of crazy. And I don't know if you want to do it." And he says, "Well, just give it to me. Like, what is it?" And I said, "We really should not just solve the problem of a screen reader. We should really solve the sort of business problem of why accessibility isn't more available and isn't more cost effective." And I said, "We should build it in, and we should just give it away. And it should get the same love and care and treatment and quality that we give everything else in this company. And it should be on everything we make, always and forever." And I said, "I know that sounds crazy, because we're not going to make money at this." It's little did I know later that would not be the case, but we're not going to charge for it. And I thought, but that's, and he could tell I was getting excited even as I was describing it. And he said, "You know what? That's something I can sell to Steve. Like, if we can actually change the way this is done in the industry and be a model, that's worth doing. And those are the kinds of things we want to be doing. And that's worthwhile." So I got a huge lesson personally to really go with your passion and go for the crazy thing, because that's usually the thing that's attractive, especially for people at that level who are not looking for small things. They're looking for huge things. And that was the huge idea, was to change the industry and change the sort of example that we could set as a company. At that time, Apple, of course, and perhaps even still today, one of the giant leaders in the industry, and people tend to follow what they do. So for me, that's maybe the proud moment that we actually accomplished what we thought we could do, which was to change things. And of course, when you look back on it, that's what Apple was all about. It was about changing things, right? That was their motto. Yeah. And so it was a perfect fit. But a good personal lesson, a great way to get this started. And of course, unbeknownst to me at that time, they said, "Well, great, go do it." I'm like, "Wait, what? Me? You want me to go do that?" And so it came to me. And of course, I mean, I'm a computer science major. I'm a great employee. I'm doing all these great things, but I didn't have a background in accessibility. And so it was really incumbent on me now to go back and really engage with the blind community and figure out, okay, how do we do this? And how do we do this in a way that's respectable and good and it's going to work and that people are going to love? So it was quite an interesting start.
"Here's to the crazy ones" was a great line in an Apple ad way back when, in their Think Different days. And I think Mike Shebanek certainly represented that, coming up with the idea. And, it's a fantastic conversation, Sean, which people should absolutely go and check out. We will have that on the front page of our website today, the real story of Apple VoiceOver, because a lot of people don't know the story. I didn't know half of the stuff we learned in that interview.
I know, it's such a great inside look into, the thinking behind all that. And of course, you have got to say it, crazy like a fox. It was a genius idea. And although we have, valid criticisms and complaints, you got to say it, they did change how things were done.
Yeah.
They absolutely did.
VoiceOver first shipped on April the 29th, 2005 on macOS X 10.4 Tiger. Wow. That takes me back. That takes me back, let me tell you. Oh, I know. It was quite a day for many people. When VoiceOver first showed up, of course, Outspoken and other options were available before that, but never built in the way that VoiceOver was and became. And of course, now it's available across multiple devices as well. And for many people, it's the iPhone that really the VoiceOver comes to life for them. For many people today, that is the route in. Here's some voices talking about their experiences using iPhone for the very first time as blind people. We hear here from Ken Reed, Robin Christopherson, and our very own Kelly McDonald.
I was using a rather ancient candy bar phone with lots of buttons on it, and that I kind of thought, yeah, that's great. I understood how to use that. I could feel the buttons on it, and I thought, that's wonderful. It was falling apart, held together with elastic bands, but I thought when I saw these smartphones coming along, I can't use that. It's all flat screen, there's nothing to touch, there's no way of feeling anything on it. And I was really thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do when I can't get the elastic bands to hold this thing together anymore. I very fortunately went to a conference where an early adopter was using an iPhone and had VoiceOver on it, and they demonstrated it to me and showed me that it is possible for a blind person to use a smartphone.
Years ago, a friend of mine was talking to me about having accessibility on a phone. And at that time, you bought the phone and bought the complimentary software. Then along came Apple with the iPhone. At that time, for me, an iPhone 4. It was a game changer.
I didn't get my first iPhone until the iPhone 4. I've got no idea why I waited a whole year, but I have never looked back. It's been an absolute life changer to use exactly the same technology as everybody else. Accessible out of the box and such a brilliant solution.
They are wonderful, and it has helped me to do so many things. I think one of the real things that made the difference was I realized that whilst it's called a phone, the last thing you end up doing is talking to people on it. So I use it for sending and receiving emails and text messages. I use it for most of my social media contacts through Facebook and Twitter. I use it for doing my shopping, particularly my grocery supplier has a great app that I can use. I use it to check my banking, and the banking apps work perfectly with VoiceOver on them. And I use it to monitor my travel through train companies and bus companies. Yeah, there's just so many different things you can do on it. And actually, just as I say, thinking of it as being something for talking to people is almost the last thing you'll do with it. And once I realized that, once I got to grips with that concept, then my iPhone became my constant companion.
I learned about playing my music off my phone, making calls, texting people. So in other words, I went from the world of having a Discman I carted around with a bunch of CDs and AM/FM access to listening to global radio stations, podcasts, and of course having all my music in my hand and being able to play it through my Bluetooth speaker. It was a game changer. Then I learned more about accessibility, and so did the rest of the world, as it was possible to grab a friend's phone, turn on VoiceOver, and make a call, and they got to learn about it. And now we know how much more it helps everybody, which to me helps the disability community, because disability now is a little bit more known. People understand, and when they hear the voice on our iPhone, it doesn't shock them as much anymore. So not only has VoiceOver made that difference to us individually, but to many others. Many people rely on dictation, VoiceOver, and so many other accessible things.
I'm not afraid to say that I'm grateful to Apple, who built VoiceOver into the device right from the start. You don't have to buy anything extra. I've been a Windows user with JAWS for many, many years, and had to pay an awful lot of extra money to get JAWS to work on my computer. But on my phone, it's in there, out the box, tap the buttons, and it starts talking, and that's great. So thank you to Apple for that. I'm quite happy to say so.
I also care a great deal about accessibility, helping more and more people be able to use this great new technology, and some great new accessibility settings in the iPhone 3GS. You go in the accessibility settings area and you find this VoiceOver. So if somebody needs to hear what they're touching with their finger for an email or web page, it'll read it to them. If you want to zoom in the display to have larger icons to be able to see it better, you can do that. If you want to invert the colors, if that helps your site, that's better. We even can pipe mono audio through both or either sides of the headphone to help you if that helps with your hearing. So great features for accessibility.
Taking us back in time just a bit there to Worldwide Developer Conference in 2009 when VoiceOver was showed off on the iPhone 3GS. Kind of incredible back then that we, I think as a blind community, breathed a sigh of relief saying, oh, we can use this thing. We can actually use it. And of course, it was available prior to that since 2005 on the Mac. Quite an incredible story, and now available pretty much on all devices. So, happy anniversary to Apple and to VoiceOver as well, making it possible for us to actually use our devices back then, which is, we should just take for granted now, don't we? We just complain about the bugs.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But there's nothing wrong in saying, you know what, thank you. It changed. Yeah, thank you.
Listen, stick around. Up next, we're going to talk all about the stellar Trek from Humanware.
Get in touch with Double Tap. Email feedback@doubletaponair.com. Leave us a voicemail at 1-877-803-4567. And now you can send an audio or video message to us on WhatsApp. That number is 1-613-481-0144.
Okay, let's talk all about the Stellar Trek from Humanware. Aaron Linson's been trying it out for a while and joins me now to talk all about it. Aaron, welcome back to Double Tap.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, lovely to have you on the show again. Aaron, it's been a while, almost what we were saying, about a year, a couple of years when you were on last talking about the Victor Reader.
Yeah.
And it's funny, now we're talking about the Stellar Trek. You're the Humanware correspondent now. That's your official title.
Well, I'd like to think so, but professional capacity. I mean, yeah, I use a lot of Humanware products, but I like the company.
Yeah, and listen, it's a company that's been around for a long time, and it's obviously had and has a great reputation for high quality products for low vision and blind people. And it's funny because I often forget sometimes about all the low vision products that Humanware do. Sometimes they'll say, we do low vision as well. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but just because we don't use that, because I'm the blind guy and so are you, we don't really use those products perhaps. So, I kind of forget. But yeah, it's more than just Braille devices. Obviously, you've got the Stellar Trek, and that's the device I'm really interested in at the moment. Your email came in and it couldn't have come in at a better time, because obviously I've been talking a lot about breadcrumb navigation, getting around, and it's funny, I don't know where you stand on this, Aaron, but I kind of feel that as much as I love my iPhone, and I do, and people love their smartphones, I just don't know if I want to rely on it all the time for every single thing I do. And when you're out and about, I think GPS, location, tracking is such a suck on the battery that I think to myself, I don't know if I want to just rely on one device. So the question I'm asking you today ultimately is, could I rely on a Stellar Trek?
Like you, Stephen, I have issues with worrying about the battery as well. And feel that, if I'm running, say, Blind Square or Voice Vista or another GPS app, or, Google Maps, Apple Maps, that's a lot of information coming in, right? And, I might want to use my phone as it's intended, as a phone, as a digital accessibility analyst and, project lead. I might get calls for multiple different things at various parts of the day. And so, I really have to think about, if I'm going out, can I augment what my phone can do with another device, right? And then I think about, okay, nothing against Blind Square, nothing against Voice Vista, but are these apps that, let's just face it, say, 3, 4, 5 years down the line with iOS updates, are they going to be able to keep up with what's going to be coming down the road when Apple decides to update their devices? No, not saying that they won't or that they're not, but I always have a fear with that, and our reliance on apps, I think is okay to a point, but then, like we've said, and like you've all said on the show, and like I tell clients all the time, if you make an update to a product or a service or a website, you break functionality, then you're breaking somebody's experience on that application, and that can be, anytime during any particular day, and for many different reasons as well. So I try to take a lot of that off of app-based functionality that I can.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you talk about that fear. Are you talking about like accessibility fears? Are you thinking about, that the app is no longer accessible? Because that's the thing that runs through my mind all the time. Yeah. It's like one update can just break accessibility, and then I'm stuffed. Doesn't matter how good the app is, right? If something doesn't work anymore in VoiceOver and I need to wait a year for it to be fixed, that's it.
Right. Or even, let's say, with the VoiceOver itself, if they make a change to VoiceOver and they break some functionality in it, and then, say that functionality is used by the app, then you're kind of hosed at that point. the app can be as accessible as it is, and it could not change. But VoiceOver itself could change as well. And then, okay, well then there goes the app's accessibility. Nothing on the developer's fault, but on Apple's side.
Yeah, that's right. This device has been out for a while, and again, the difference between buying a device like this and say a smartphone is that you're not going to get a new one every year, and that's a good thing.
Correct.
Because you're spending a lot of money on these things. And I think the longevity of them is good. Obviously, getting software updates. We're going to talk about that because, of course, recently we had the news about some big software updates that have come to the Stellar Trek. But in terms of that getting around functionality, how does it? I don't want to say compare. Maybe we should just talk about it as an individual device at the moment. We'll maybe get to comparisons.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it as it stands. How does it fare as a navigation aid, as a way to get around, as a guide, essentially?
So in its intended purpose, you can do a little bit more with it because it does have a camera on the back of the device, but we'll talk about that later. As its intended purpose as a GPS device, I would say that there is nothing else like it. We all have the issue where we have a cane or a guide dog in one hand and have our phone in the other. A lot of us, including myself, if I can get away with putting my phone in my pocket and not have to have that out, I would completely love to do that more often than I usually do. And the Stellar Trek allows me to do that. A lot of people might say, well, it makes you look blind. Look, I don't, I've been blind now for 7 years.
Who cares?
I lived 30 years of my life vision impaired. And then, 7 now pretty much completely blind at this point. And at this point, I don't care.
Well, if it makes you look blind, it's because you are blind, right? I mean, I don't know what that means, right?
Exactly.
But we are blind. What are you going to do about it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's nothing really you can do about it. So, having a handheld GPS device in my hand, I don't really, it doesn't really matter to me. But I think it does quite well in what its intended purpose is.
Now, one thing I've heard, and I had very limited experience with it. I had a couple of weeks with it a while ago, and it wasn't long enough, frankly, for me to get my head around it. I didn't take the offered support at the time. That was silly. That was on me. Humanware said, "Hey, look, we'll get someone out to you." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll figure this out. It'll be fine." And then I just, completely screwed it up. I definitely feel with this, I needed a bit more support, and I should have taken it at the time. That will be rectified soon. But in terms of that setup process and getting to grips with it, how does it compare to using a smartphone? Because I'm kind of thinking, right, I mean, out of the box, it should be fairly simple to understand and put in a destination and then head off for a walk. Is it?
There is some learning curve that you have to do. I mean, there is some setup process that you have to do as well with it, because you do have to connect it to Wi-Fi to get updates. But once you get past that and understand how the keyboard works, because there's 2 different ways you can have the keyboard laid out, and it's a virtual keyboard. You can't hook up like an external keyboard to it. But once you understand that concept of it, it's pretty much real easy to navigate and get around. Now, I'm one of those people, unlike you, Stephen, who can read a manual and can understand it and can conceptually get around it.
Yeah, it's not me.
Right. Now,
fall asleep listening to a podcast. What chance have I got with a manual?
Exactly. Now, I don't know if Mystic Access has done a tutorial on the Stellar Trek, but hey, guys, if you're listening to this, that'd be awesome to do, because I would love to see that come to
I think they have, actually, because I'm sure in one of the emails I got from Humanware, someone did point to a Mystic Access podcast. I maybe get mixed up with something else, but I think that's right.
Awesome.
And if not, then they absolutely should.
Yeah, they've done it great. Having more stuff like that, and for us, especially if we're considering buying a device like this, I think it's really important.
It's like a walkthrough before you buy it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You don't get that when you walk into a Best Buy and want to look at the latest iPhone or the Mac or what have you.
Well, the problem is there's just a lack of. It's not the lack of resources; it's a lack of people to talk to about this as well. Because you know what it's like. I don't know if you're like me in this, but if I buy something new and I have a friend who's just bought one as well, we're spending time on the phone together. We're chatting. We're jumping on a Zoom call. We're just saying, right, I mean, like, I'll be honest, Aaron, when I get hold of this Stellar Trek, I'm going to be calling you, right? I'm going to say, okay, talk me through this. Because, look, you've done all those steps before. So,
Sure.
It's about, I guess, kind of getting to grips with how the thing works. And, it's not particularly complicated, I know. But I think it's just, there's two sides to it for me. One is that's the hardware. It's the fact that it's designed for blind people. Love all that. But then you've got the real world side, okay? And that is when you're trying to get somewhere and it's a really horrible wet day and you just want to get to a location and put that information in and get it to take you there. That's always the bit where I find the challenge. Now, I find that a lot with my smartphone. I remember once trying an app to find a bus, and it took me so long to get the information about the bus that I'd missed 3 of them by the time it took me to figure out where on the app to go to put in the information about how to get the bus. And it's this kind of stuff that really irritates me, and it just feels like, these devices shouldn't be that complicated. And I'm hoping it's not going to be.
Right. I mean, even as a seasoned iPhone user, I've been using iPhones for years. And there are times when I've had to travel for conferences, for work or whatever, and just getting an Uber or a Lyft to the place is a nerve-wracking experience. And it's not because I don't know what I'm doing. It's the fact that, if I had a little bit of vision, this would be a little bit easier. But and that's why, coding applications and making applications sort of what I like to call speech ready is easier said than done, because there's different requirements for people who are doing things through speech. And this is where devices like the Stellar Trek and even I'd even say the Mantis with its speech output through Bluetooth have come into play.
Well, that's made a heck of a difference for a lot of people. I mean,
for sure.
I can read the menu and I can read it in Braille and I can go through the menu in the process and, I can do all that. But yeah, there is an efficiency aspect to that as well sometimes. And if you can speed it up a little bit with audio, that's great. Talk me through the process then. So you've left your house, you've decided in that moment you're going to a cafe, or perhaps you're in the house first and you've decided you want to go to a cafe for, to grab a coffee with a friend. And you've picked your cafe, or where you think you want to go, or maybe you just want to explore the area. Talk me through that process with the Stellar Trek. How do you do it?
Sure. So the front face of the device, you have a 4-way navigational D-pad, if you will, with a confirm button in the center. On the top and bottoms of those devices, from left to right, you have a long button and a short button. And each of those does various different things. You can actually hold down the left button near the bottom and turn on key describer mode, which will allow you to then press all the buttons and listen to what they do. Now, depending on what mode you're in, and for how long you press, if it's a short press or a long press, especially on the D-pad side here, you can those descriptions will change. So long pressing, say the up arrow key, will get you into the other applications that this device has. But if we look at just going to, say, the cafe destination, you would long press the bottom left button, which is the location button. And what that will do is it will bring up a list of what's around you. And you can cycle through that by pressing the right or left arrow. Or you can listen for a menu that says select extended search. And what that will do is that will actually allow you to either look by category, so say cafes, and you could look through all the cafes within your vicinity and choose the one that's closest to you. Or you could do a search for that cafe and actually find it. And then once you found your location, you just press the enter key or the confirm key, and off you go.
And it's as simple as that. Now, okay, so talk me through the walking directions then. So what's it giving you? What verbally are you getting or are you hearing?
So you can toggle some of this on and off. but I have it all on because I want to know everything and anything that's around me. So it's giving me cross streets, side streets, the names of those streets if it has them. If it doesn't, it'll say street with no name, which is fine. It may just need to be updated. But it's also giving me locations that are around me, and depending on the map data and the businesses that are there, that might be correct and that might not. So you might even want to double check if say there's a coffee shop that's half a mile away from you, that it may not be there because it might be something completely different. It's not the fault of Humanware or the Stellar Trek at all. It's just the map data
that's the map data
needs to be updated, right? So that may or may not be accurate, but again, that's not that big of a deal. But I'm getting all the businesses that are around me in that specific location. But as I'm moving towards my destination, I'm getting directions towards, okay, in this number of feet, or you can change it even to meters and stuff. Turn right or turn left, or your destination is directly to the right in front of you when you hit that.
And is that
giving you
beeps as well? Is it giving you like a almost soundscape type beeps?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, almost soundscape type beeps. But the cool thing it also is doing now is it's giving you stop sign or traffic light directions if it has that information, which it didn't used to do before. And I don't know why I find that interesting, but to me it's interesting to know that.
So it's telling you that there are traffic lights. It's because of course that does tie into a new feature, right? Which is this new
exactly.
The pedestrian crossing feature came in last year, didn't it?
It did. Mm-hmm.
But you've got this additional function as well now with the ability to use the camera to see the traffic lights and tell you it's safe to cross, which is a new feature.
It is, and right now we should say that at the time of this recording, that is in beta. So by the time you listen to it, it might be out. In a couple months, it might even be fully out. But what this does is, and I thought, ooh, this is going to give Oko a run for its money. And
yes,
and right now, again at the time of this recording, Humanware is having their spring sale. So at least here in the US, this device is usually around $1,600. But right now with that spring sale, you're getting it for under $1,000.
Wow.
And I think at that price, it's definitely worth it. Especially if you're looking at somebody who is traveling a lot, having to cross streets and have traffic lights, and they don't want to pay that Oko subscription. Again, nothing against Oko, but having this device do that with this AI capability that it has, I would. I'm interested to see how that works. And I haven't got a chance to play with it yet, but I'll definitely come back on and talk about it when I've gotten the chance to.
Well, especially because you are in the US, you're in Kentucky. I tell you that as if you don't know. Of course you know you are, because you told me.
Well, sometimes.
I know that feeling. Yeah, I know that only too well. But because you've got the ability to have Oko there as well, I'd be really keen to know from you what the experience is like between the two. We don't have Oko in the UK, and I don't know if we ever will.
Yeah, that's right.
But I'd be keen to know how they compare, because I know Humanware have told us that they say what Oko does is very similar to what we do. And it is. I mean, certainly. Well, that's the result of the work. But the question is, how good at that is it? Because, of course, this, I guess, has an impact on, well, the environment, the weather, everything will have an impact, I guess, on what the camera can see. So, and that would be the case for any smartphone, any device. So I'm intrigued to see how that works out. But it sounds like what Humanware are doing with the Stellar Trek is they really are thinking about the entire route, because I was reading into it and things like bus stop information, bus stop detection, I think, is that right? They had something like that in there as well, which is again amazing.
Yes, they do.
I didn't even know I had that.
Yeah. Now it's I've not played with that enough to, okay, can it get me to that location of that bus stop? But I'm assuming that it could, if they haven't changed, if they haven't changed where those bus stops are, right?
Yeah.
But it could get me to that, and it does show me that information, which is awesome.
Oh, so that's GPS map based then. That's not through the camera. It's not using AI for that.
Yeah, correct. It's all going through the map. It's not using the AI for that. Now, it'd be neat if it could combine both and do both of those. But that would be, I think, pretty high level for them to do.
One of the things that a lot of blind people buy Pro Max or Pro iPhones for is LIDAR.
Right.
And I've been saying for a long time, I think, LIDAR is a great feature, but it's a very expensive and very premium feature that you could spend a lot of money on, frankly, and maybe use once or twice. And, I think if you were looking for bang for your buck, I would say, hey, do you know what? If you wanted to, you could probably get an iPhone SE, or 16E as it is now, and get yourself a stellar Trek, especially on the spring sale, right? You could get one of those
Yeah, exactly.
and save yourself a few quid, and actually, as a result, end up with two really cool devices. And the great thing is that the Stellar Trek has got its own door detection functionality. I know that obviously the LiDAR does more than that in the iPhone, but ultimately door detection is the one that a lot of blind people are interested in. And Stellar Trek has it. The question is, how good is it?
Oh, it's excellent.
Really?
Because I've compared both because I have an iPhone 15 Pro at the moment, and I'm considering upgrading this year depending on what Apple does, and I'm really thinking about not going with a Pro this year because I have all the information that I need, such as door detection and all that, within the Stellar Trek. So why pay extra for something that honestly I don't ever use?
That's my take on it as well. I think there's a lot of people who probably think they need it because, obviously bigger is better. And I know there's other reasons for buying Pro phones, like the battery life is better and all that. But, even today, I don't think it matters as much as it used to. I really don't.
Think so
I mean,
either.
how far away are you from a charger? Let's be honest about it.
Right.
Probably sitting next to one most of the day. And if you're not, it'll survive till you get home. But again, it's about sharing the load, right? If you have an iPhone and you have a Stellar Trek, or you're using different devices rather than having the one, then of course you're going to be using less battery life on that main device. And I think there's a little bit of a responsibility on us as blind people to try and be aware of that, because what we've unfortunately got here is ourselves kind of painted into a corner with this technology. I had a friend of mine say to me once, why do we have to rely so much on technology? We should know our own skills well enough to be able to navigate around, do what we need to do in the absence of technology, which I think is a great idea in theory. But of course, technology does make life a lot easier. And of course, good luck trying to pay for something if you don't have your phone, your Apple Pay, or your bank card.
Exactly.
So we do rely so much on technology to do things. I went out one day, funnily enough, I'd gone out one day and I had forgotten my mobile phone. And I had my Apple Watch on. And I thought, well, I should be okay with just the Apple Watch because it's got everything on there. And it turned out the cellular connection wasn't working on it. I didn't know this because I was never aware of it. I was always next to the phone. So it never picked up. I never picked up on the fact it was never working. So I ended up with this situation where I had absolutely no access to anything. And I thought, I can't pay for the bus into town. I can't pay for anything when I get to town. How am I going to, do X, Y, Z? I can't call anyone to tell them that there's a problem. I thought, right, I have to go home. And that was it. I had to abandon the day. And, it does show how much reliance we have on technology. Now, you can argue the merits, but at the end of the day, I think if you are going to rely on it, you should try and spread the load a little bit on different devices, if that's affordable to you.
No. It definitely. And again, if it's affordable to you, if you can, if you have the funds to do that and are able to do that, I will admit, coming from a place, if you want to call it privilege, I wouldn't necessarily say that. But if you want to, that whatever, that's on you. But like having a job in the position that I am in, I feel like that it's my responsibility not to test every single piece of technology, because my bank account would scream at me.
Oh, me too.
if I even tried, but it's to be aware of it, and to what I feel like I need to get the use out of, then I'm going to try my best to use it to the best of its ability. I mean, there are times, I grew up in the early 90s and 2000s where GPS technology was becoming available, but it wasn't quite there. So I remember having to memorize bus routes and all the buses to get downtown and when downtown, okay, the names of the blocks and how many steps it was to this particular area. And so at that point, we didn't have that. But when that technology came about within, I don't remember, I think it was the Trek devices. So sort of like the Palm Pilot PDA devices with the tactile covers on them.
Yeah.
That we were blown away by just like, oh, we didn't know this building had, a donut shop. It was right by the school. Oh, that's cool. Let's go out and see what else is around. And even now with these devices, with the cell check in itself, I feel like I'm getting more information of what's around me out of this device than I am with any other GPS app on my phone.
That's fascinating to me.
Because to me it's made for blind people by blind people. And I'm not saying that other developers don't do that, because there are people that there, but I think there's something just like with the Glide device, it's made for blind people by a blind person.
Yeah, that's right. And
I think that makes all the difference.
It makes that an interesting combination, doesn't it? I mean, down the line, potentially, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Glide, Stellar Trek, iPhone in back pocket. I've got everything. And, and let's be honest as well, that we live in a world now where phones are being stolen on a fairly regular basis out of people's hands as they walk down the street. I don't really fancy my new iPhone being grabbed from me, which, for all the reasons I said before, is a world that would just be terrifying. And of course, I'm not saying it's harder for blind people if that happens, but it kind of is as well, because, think about the setup, the startup again. You got to start all that beginning up again, which is difficult enough.
Right.
But okay, let's talk about the updates, because obviously this Stellar Trek is filled with features.
Yes.
And it's got more. With the book reader in there, it now has some other cool things like text export for routes, for embossing purposes for O&M, which is kind of interesting as well. Tell me about your thoughts on the book reader, because I have heard a lot of people say they loved the Victor Reader Trek, and they kind of wanted that back. And I kind of wondered if that was going to make its return, but instead they seem to have just decided, you know what, we have a device here, let's build into that. What's your thoughts on that?
I've not tried it, because I have a Victor Reader Stream actually sitting here to my left that I use as well. But to have it in one device, especially if you're going to buy it at its retail price of $1,600 and you're getting that book reader functionality in with that, that's you can look at that extra $600 as the price of the Victor Reader Stream. So if you want one device to do it all, that's then that'd be the way to go about it.
Do you think it was a smart move?
I worry about the space and all that.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's true. But do you worry about the smartness of doing that? I mean, on one hand, I think it's actually quite clever, because what they didn't do was turn around and say, you got to go out and buy this whole new thing. Which people may have done, because they would have loved the device. So they would have probably done it and went out and bought a new one. Instead, the company said, let's just build it into this existing device. We have the functionality in here. I kind of like that in a way. I'm kind of like, I respect that, because it's like, oh, thank God, I don't have to spend more money.
Right. Yeah, no, I would agree. But I look at it from a product standpoint and from a project management standpoint as, there's scope creep that comes in when you have functionality and features that you want to put into a device like this. Is it better off to lash that onto like the Victor Reader Stream, we have a reading device for that purpose, right? And then have a GPS device that does a couple other things such as document reading and color detection and door detection, and have it do those couple things or few things well, and then have another device dedicated towards what it does well.
That's always a tricky question, because again, we end up just back with another smartphone, don't we?
Exactly.
We end up with two smartphones in our pocket.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if that happens, I might as well just forget all of this specialized hardware that's developed for blind people in mind and just turn to my smartphone.
And just buy two of them.
Exactly.
Yeah, then you've got all the coverage you could possibly need. Obviously navigation's its primary focus, right? That's what it's there for. But what is one feature that's in the Stellar Trek that might surprise people and maybe surprise you as well when you got it? Be a new feature or an old feature?
I would say the short text reading that's there, because unlike Seeing AI, where it has that feature in it, Seeing AI does quite well. The short text reading and even the document reading on the device kind of takes it into a whole new level. So like you can scan, say, like a I don't know, like a packet of food. And what it will do is it will take that text and block it into different chunks. So like if you don't want to see the nutrient fact ingredient or the nutrient facts, you can just move past that by pressing the right arrow and get down into the directions and just kind of see the cooking directions for that particular product. And that's one thing that no app has ever done.
That's pretty cool.
And just the ease of use of the device too.
And have you used it to read letters?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And like packaging and stuff like that? Because I always think about, my thing is always, is this mail for me? That's always the question I ask myself every day. Is this for me? And, you know, I'm always wary that I don't know, because I've opened so many of my neighbors' packages. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm so wary of it. And I think I just want something I can quickly scan that will tell me who it's for. And that's all I need to know, right? That's it. Mm-hmm. It's using AI to do it. I mean, it's OCR, but is it mixing in AI to do all this?
I believe in some instances it is.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like such a cool device, and way more capable than I think I give it credit for, or certainly did give it credit for. I just assumed this is a navigation device and that's it, but it has got so much more. I think you're right. I think we've got to watch with mission creep that it doesn't become this huge, bulky thing that's doing lots of stuff, and actually it's not really what its intended purpose was. But I do respect the company for not making us go and buy a new product yet. I mean, a Stellar Trek 2, I'm sure, will come out at some point. Hardware will improve, and so be it. But, you know, like the Victor Reader, I mean, that was 10 years before we saw the new one. And, you know, obviously we got the benefits of that. So, you know, it's very interesting. I mean, it sounds like a device you would definitely recommend to people, or at least to try.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it and try it if you can get your hands on it. You know, I think, you know, it's not and if you were to buy, say, if you had the ability to buy this, or say an iPhone that could do everything, you know, then obviously, you know, I would say the iPhone, just because you have more there. But if you have the ability to at least consider a dedicated GPS device along with color detection, document quick reading and long reading, and just all the new features that are coming down the pipe with the Stellar Trek series, I would definitely say it's worth considering.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it comes down to cost for people, right? That's the bottom line. Always comes down to cost. But, you know, it's important we talk about the merits of each device or app in its own way. One final question, because I didn't come back to you on this, and I wanted to just ask you this. You mentioned that compared to Google Maps, Apple Maps, you felt the Stellar Trek just bet them in so many different ways. Why is that? What was the difference? What were you getting from the Stellar Trek you didn't get from Google or Apple?
The main thing is what else is around me. Just like when we look at the differences between using a cane or a guide dog, right? A guide dog is going to take you around something. So you're really not going to know that it's there. A cane, you're either going to know it's there or you're going to run into it, right? And I kind of take that philosophy with GPS navigation. Great that, with the Apple Maps and the Google Maps that you're taking me to my destination. But what if there's something along the way going to my destination that I want or need to get to? And if I don't know that is around me and I'm not exploring my location, the GPS, the Stellar Trek allows me that capability. Just like somebody, who's sighted driving a car, they have the ability to, while going to my destination, I need to go to the grocery store to pick something up before I go to this my primary destination, and they can do that. But the Stellar Trek allows us to do that while we're walking.
Yeah, that's actually a really important point because unfortunately with navigation, it's all point to point, isn't it?
Exactly.
You're going from one place to another, and it's almost like being guided through an airport. If you've ever had that experience,
right? Yeah.
You're taking past all the stores, you're taking past all the bathrooms, you're taking past everything, straight to the gate and dropped like a parcel. So
exactly.
And wait for your plane, and it's a horrible experience because you miss so much. And you think I would have explored all this if I was a sighted person. I would just stop and say, "Hey, I'm going to go in here." So no, you're right. I think it sounds very interesting. I can't wait to get hands on with it. So. Can you be my support person on this? Can I call you?
I would love to. I would love to do that. And going back to the sort of the travel and the airport thing for a minute. I remember when we had the first these first devices around the 2000s with the I can't remember what they're called. It's in the back of my tongue. I don't remember what they were called. The Trek devices. You could use them to actually map indoor locations. So I remember I went to a school for the blind here in Kentucky and getting this and mapping the entire building. Not that I needed to because I knew the entire building, but just having that ability. And so like having, science classroom is to your right, and being able to be guided inside virtually with that was quite awesome. And you could do the same thing with the Stellar Trek device as well.
Yeah, that's great. It just sounds amazing. Can't wait to try it out. And I'd also like to offer you to come back at some point because I think our listeners will have a lot of questions that I haven't asked you that they will want to ask you. So if you do have questions for Aaron, do get in touch and drop us an email at feedback@doubletaponair.com because I'd love to put together a list of our listener questions and come back to you. Because again, it's that thing of, talking to someone who's actually using the thing is very different to getting the sales pitch from the company. No harm to any company.
Yeah, for sure.
But they want to sell you a product, right?
They want to sell you the device, man. Yeah. I mean, that's what they're doing,
But there's questions that we just want answered ourselves and we will know the answer to. So I'd love to get you back on to do that. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on and have a great day.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to Aaron, and thank you as always for listening. Sean and I are back tomorrow with lots more of your feedback, and we're talking about the BT Speak and the Orbit Speak. Which would win in a fight? We'll find out tomorrow.